All right, it is Tuesday. A few minutes late today, 11:43. Had some technical challenges getting up and running this morning, but Training Tuesday, not Template Tuesday anymore. Today we're going to talk about the dashboard and what those metrics are all about, how to use them, and just give you a sense of what's happening there. Also, going to give you a little peek of at a small new feature that's being released that some of you are really going to like. So this thing is actually a new version of the dashboard that you're going to see, and so it's not out yet, so it's still in QA. So if we run into any bugs, do not fret. We'll iron those out before we release it to you. Also, this one is going to be kind of a slow roll. I think it's going to start rolling out in the next week or so, but it may take several weeks to get this one out to all customers because it requires a bit of a change to the database. But you'll see these updates in your account over the next several weeks at some point. So I thought it was a good time to show you what this thing is all about and how to use it effectively. It should be pretty quick because I'm just going to describe what these metrics are, and I think after that it'll be pretty self-explanatory. I want to just make sure that I'm seeing myself here. Let's see, Ontraport user community discussion. There we go. Okay, and I'm going to look at the comments. Okay, very good. So the metrics dashboard. Hopefully you can see my screen here in a second, and this is what it looks like. It's a whole bunch of numbers. As you know, we don't have sort of like line charts or bar graphs yet, although there's stuff in the works for some of that, which is going to be pretty exciting. But for now, this thing is a bunch of numbers. They're pretty useful the way this thing actually gets set up. Some of the stuff that you can do in here is also doable in campaigns. This dashboard was built long before campaigns were available. So there's some replication of the kind of reporting you can get in campaigns as what you can get in the dashboard. But it's it can be nice to get a bunch of numbers next to each other in a real easy to digest format. So what is it? It's a bunch of metrics, and these metrics can be set up to reflect a whole bunch of different things. You can get really pretty sophisticated with it if you want to. You can obviously edit the layout by clicking here and dragging these things around. You can make different. You kind of like lay it out however you want. And there's a grid layout if you want them to be a little bit smaller. That one's acting a little funky today, so we're not going to deal with that. Like I said, we'll get that fixed up before we release it to you. But let's just get in here and dive into the nitty gritty. Some of the stuff is, I can understand it's a little bit of something to get your mind around, but I think once you understand how it works, it's actually pretty simple. So here's the new feature. Here's the name of the thing. So you just name your metrics, say like, sales or whatever it is you might want. And notice this is the new feature. We have an object type here. So you're going to be able to create metrics pretty soon on the other objects in your account, companies, deals, whatever custom objects you may have created. So that'll be pretty cool. And but for now, we're going to just talk about contacts. And they're basically, let's see, what have we got? 3, 6, 7 different types of metrics that you can create with this thing. And we've named these in ways to help you understand how they're going to calculate. So so here they are. This first metric is going to add up the number of contacts who did something. So any sort of action, it's going to work like a trigger, right? So if they're, we'll just click it in here, and then you just add a trigger. And what is the thing? This is just asking what is the thing that they did. So if you just put added to database, you can delete that one. So that's the thing that they did. So number of contacts who did something, and what did they do? They were added to the database. This is just going to give you a metric that shows how many people were added over a particular time frame to your database, however they came in. Now it says here we've got to select the default time frame, and that's the one that's going to show up when you first come to the dashboard. So if you want to see today or yesterday or last 7 days, a lot of times what people will do is actually make a few of these things, right? So what they might do is say I'm going to make a trigger for the number of people who are added to my database today. So this is, it's not sales anymore, it's new contacts. and I'll save that. And I don't even know where I put that thing. New contact. Oh, it goes to the end here, I guess. So we can move this sucker up. And yeah, so you could do something like this. You could put this, I don't know how many, there we go. New contacts today, you can see that thing's already updating. It's going to start calculating that for us automatically. Another thing that you're going to notice, I wonder if I can't put this over here. Maybe I can. No, I guess I can't have an empty column. I don't know what the deal is with that. Maybe it goes here. And then I can put it there. Yeah, I guess I can't have an empty column. So this was last updated just now. This thing is going to start updating a lot faster for you, which is going to be nice. And also when you come in here and look at these things, they'll start just automatically updating as you look at them. So, I'm in edit mode right now. I can save my edit, and now I'm in kind of like looking at the metrics mode, and I can flip through the various time frames. And as soon as I look at this last 7 days, it's going to start updating, and that shouldn't take too long. And but what I can do, and I can always just flip through and look at that, but it's kind of fun sometimes to be able to look at different time frames next to each other. So while that updates, I'm going to add a new metric. I'm going to say new contacts, and what am I going to use? I'm going to say, how about month to date? This month. Month to date. All right, and then what is the trigger? Again, it's added to the database, and that's all I want to do. Now, if I wanted to just look at certain contacts, if they're added to the database, but only if they have a certain value or attribute, I could add a condition on this, right? I could also change this and say if I want to only see contacts that are added, via a certain form. Maybe I'd use, they filled out a particular form. How many people filled out this particular form today? These are landing pages here, so I can go into the various forms on my landing pages, which is cool. That's also actually a new feature that I think is coming with this release. But right now we're just going to make another version of this. And so what I've done here is I've created a new look at that. So the last 7 days got updated. And I'm going to finish that. So this month is now updating. And so what I could have here is, same thing, new contacts today, new contacts yesterday if I want it, new contacts this week, this month, and I can see all those metrics right next to each other. Another really cool thing about this dashboard is that, of course, I can click on these contacts and it'll take me to a group of the people that are represented by these contacts. Now, this you'll notice has 50,010, and I think the dashboard said something a little bit less than that. That's 50,016. So that's going to be the discrepancy there is going to be probably deleted contacts, right? So there's going to be some contacts that were added, got counted here, but then got deleted. So so those obviously won't show up in my group, but there you go. So you can take a look at any of these particular contacts and do a mass action, send them an email or whatever it is you want to do. Subscribe them to a sequence. It's a good way to look at your historic data, because in a campaign you could get a campaign that calculates for you number of contacts added to your database, but it's only going to work going forward. Once you publish that thing, it'll start working and it'll start collecting data. But with this, you can look backwards and it'll start calculating for you. If I want to calculate last week to date or last week, as I flip through these, it's going to kick off the update. And it'll take a minute, but then that'll be updated and it'll start updating regularly. You can also see, that this was last updated 3 minutes ago. And if I click on it, this will say last updated, well, never, but we'll figure out, let's start updating right away. Okay, so that just now says last updated just now, new context month to date. Okay, so there we go. Next, let's make another new metric. So we understand basically like number of contacts who did something. This can be all sorts of different things. Any one of these triggers. So, did they open an email? You can click an email link. You might be able to, you might want to compare. If they, had a message sent to them, well, what message? Were they sent a particular email? And if so, did they open it? And if so, did they click it? You could create metrics right next to each other to show you that information. That might be interesting. Let's see what else could we put in here. Had a task assigned to them. Had a task completed with a particular outcome. So new lead notification, give them a call. That you could just say how many tasks were assigned, and then right next to that you might put, well, how many were completed with a particular outcome. They were not interested, or they're interested, follow up. I can start to see, how things are happening over time there. And again, I can click on those contacts to see who they are. All right, a field is updated. Anytime a field gets updated, maybe it's a status. How many people moved from, prospect to lead to customer. And you could create that, metric right next to each other. How many have had a call logged? How many let's see, opens an email, unsubscribes, hard bounces, all sorts of things that you can do here. Tag is added, whatever it might be. Purchases a product, obviously. How many contacts purchase a product? Now that's not going to be the number of products purchased, it's how many contacts. So what that means is it's unique contacts. If one contact buys a product 3 times, it's still going to be 1. The number of contacts who purchased the product is 1, right? So that's going to be unique contacts who did something. Now, if you want to have the number of products purchased, you go down to the next one. So this is number of times something happened, which is like the last one, except for it's not unique anymore. Now it's actually counting up the number of times. So if one contact purchases something 3 times, then it's going to be 3 instead of 1, because the thing happened 3 times, right? And again, we've got all these different triggers. How many calls were logged? And so this is going to be non-unique. So if one contact does something several times, then it's going to be non-unique. It's going to add it up every single time. How many times was this form filled out? Well, if one contact does it 30 times, it's going to say 30. Again, other than that, it's basically the same. You can add triggers, conditions here. So I want to see the number of contacts who filled out the form, but only ones who are in California or whatever it might be. So that's how that works. Next, average number of times something happened per contact. That's, I'm not sure how often that's going to be useful. We'll see what might you want to do. Of the people who, of the contacts who are buyers, how many of them refunded my product? How many got refunded? That'd be interesting, a refund rate. How on average, right? A refund rate on average. Of the people who received this particular email, can I do that? Has ever clicked? Let's see, let's get rid of this. Let's see, open an email, had a message sent to them. So of all the people who had a particular message sent, then, how many of them clicked it? You might get a click-through rate or something like that for an email. That might be useful for a webinar attendance, something like that. So you're going to count that up. Oops, new metric. So that's what number of times something happened, average number of times something happened for contact. Conversion rate, this is an interesting one. This is the number of times that first event 1 happened and then event 2 happened, right? So a conversion rate between 2 things happening. So for example, number of times people were added to my database and then became customers. You then purchased something, right? You could set that up. So added to database is the first event, and the second event is purchases, any product. It'd be interesting to see what percentage of the people that are added to my database eventually purchase a product, right? Now we do have a thing here. This conversion happens once, or this conversion repeats. That's just asking how many times do you want us to count a conversion? If somebody buys a second product, do you want us to count it again as a second conversion or not? Probably in this particular example, you wouldn't want that, right? You're trying to figure out what percentage of my list becomes buyers. So I would just say, okay, they've only become a buyer once, so that conversion happens once. So that is how we would use that. You could do this on you could change this to visits a page. Actually, it's URL here. Contact visits URL. Notice this. You want to get this just right. http://www or whatever it is. Whatever link it is that they're going to visit. Ontraport.com/tools. And do be aware that we can use sort of asterisks in here. So if you want to find out if they went to a whole folder or whatever it might be, or a subdomain, asterisks are like wildcards. So this will the first event will trigger if anybody visited that tools folder, and it's going to just have to be an exact match. You'll see the visits in the contact log, so you can see kind of what page people have visited, and when that matches, they'll be counted as event number 1 having happened. And then the question is, of the people who did thing 1, how many of them go on to do thing 2? All right, notice that there's a little error here. It says I'm unable to find the tracking script. So you got to make sure you have the tracking script, obviously, on the page here. I don't know if that's really true. Seems like the tracking script is probably there, but I may have done something wrong. I don't know. Oh no, it's probably because I used a wildcard. Yeah, I used a wildcard, so it can't know what pages we're talking about. It's just reminding me that you got to make sure the script is on there for that to work. So contact visits that page, then they fill out maybe a form on that particular page. So that's my conversion rate on the page, right? It's going to give me a sense of what that conversion is. People who buy and then buy an upsell might be another conversion. People who buy and then refer somebody might be a conversion. Lots of different conversions you have in your business. Again, this is information that you can see in campaigns. It's worth building that out in campaigns because you can get, especially if you're using UTM variables to track your marketing, you can start to filter this stuff by source, so you can see who where your best customers are coming from. But for historic information, this is how you do it. Again, we talked about the conversion happening once or twice, so that's pretty cool. Average time between two things happening. So this is just like the conversion rate metric, except for instead of asking, well, how many people convert, it's asking how long does it take for people to convert between those two things. So from the time that they are added to my database, how long on average does it take for me to get them to buy something, right? And then this is, how do you want to use the first occurrence? Use the first time the person ever did the first event, or both events must happen within the time frame. So this is the time frame. If you set this to today, use the first time that a person ever did the first event. That's the time frame they're talking about. Or do you want to say both events must happen within the time frame, year to date, for example? Probably a lot of times you're going to want to leave it on that first one. That'll probably make most sense in most cases. So yeah, and then conditions is going to just filter it down. So of the people who are added to my database and eventually purchase something, but you could say, but maybe only people that attended a webinar, right? A field is, they clicked a particular link. So I know that they attended a webinar. That'll show me that if they're added to my database, and maybe 2% of them eventually buy. But if I filter it by people who attended a webinar, well then 17% of the people eventually buy. So that gives me an idea of, man, maybe I should get more people on my webinars. Just a thought there. So that's how that one works. And then this is just going to total up some stuff across all contexts. And again, you can filter it down based on these conditions. So right here we just have dollars. So this is how you get your sales total value of sales of a particular product. So maybe you say, I want to see how many of them purchased, product 1 or any product. But again, only people who clicked this link, they attended my webinar, or only people who were referred by a certain referral partner or whatever it is. Again, this is going to, there's a lot of data this system has to calculate through, so it'll start churning away as soon as you save this thing, and then it'll give you a number of people or rather a total value in this case, and again, it'll be clickable. You can see the people that we added up there. And then finally, average value for any numeric field across context. So this might be, gosh, a number of different things, like total sales. Okay, it's total sales of a product, or total sales or total transactions, total dollars of transactions by status, or total sales of a product. So again, they purchased, product one. How many? What is the average? Or if you just said any product, what is the average value of a customer? This would be average value of all the people on my list. Or you could say, has ever purchased any product. So of the people that have ever purchased anything, what is the average value of the things they purchased, right? That's an important number to know, that maybe I get 10% of people that purchase my products, but sorry, I was just looking at the chat there. Maybe 10% of the people buy my products, but of that 10% who do, my average value is $1,200. That's really interesting, because then I can kind of back out and say, well, I can afford to spend up to $120 to get a customer, presuming obviously that my costs are zero. So you're gonna have to take into account your margins and stuff like that. But you can figure out real quickly how much you can afford to spend to get a customer, and then based on that, you can judge whether your marketing programs are effective or not, and where you can afford to advertise, right? So important numbers to know. Again, some of this stuff is achievable by looking at campaigns, and some of the detail you can get on there is really solid, but campaigns are forward-looking only. From the day you set it up, it'll start collecting data. This is all time. It'll actually churn through your database of information and come up with what has happened in the past. So that is that's metrics. It's pretty simple, actually, once you kind of like talk through and think about it. And again, you can set these default times, organize this stuff the way you want to. Color changes based on metrics would be awesome. Yeah, that's a cool idea. We could let you set kind of like an Excel or whatever, conditional formatting or whatever, right? So if the number is less than X, then maybe we make it red, or green if it's more than Y. That's a cool idea. So we'll think about that for the future. But right now, that's what we got going for metrics. Hopefully that helps understand what this tool is for and how you might use it in your business. And I'm going to leave it at that today. Next week, we're going to talk, I'm not going to make any promises about what we're going to talk about, but we'll talk next week. Come back Tuesday at 11:30. Cheers, everybody.